We got Jay in the house.
What's
Jay
up?
Flores. It's
These bad boys on, right?
It was a quick decision to do this podcast.
I appreciate the invite, man.
Yeah.
It's good to be here and to know people in the area and be able
Yeah.
to hang out, and not just people, but people that are trying to do some similar things. So
Right.
Appreciate the invite.
So you're out here in LA. Like, what's the occasion?
It's a crazy occasion, man. It's hanging out, hopefully, with Bad Bunny and
Oh, wow.
Cheetos. So it's an experiment for Bad Bunny's foundation and in partnership with Cheetos. So basically, last year I received a grant from the Deja Tu Huella Fund, which in English is Leave Your Mark Fund, where Bad Bunny selected 25 small businesses that were leaving their mark on the Hispanic community.
Wow.
And so my brand, It's Not Magic, It's Science, what I've been doing with kids in the community, especially with my kit being bilingual now, got recognized for that. And now we're kind of like showcasing kind of like Shark Tank does, like how it's gone. And then also kind of promoting the next group of people that could potentially get it. So
Yep.
I'm excited. I'm really happy that it could be something STEM that's being highlighted.
Right.
Especially growing up and being Puerto Rican, like it's usually Miss Universe, it's usually baseball and boxing and music, right? That's what we're known for. And I want Puerto Rico to be known for STEM as well.
Yeah. I do have questions about how you got to, Bad Bunny to sponsor this and Cheetos. Like, I have questions about that, but.
Yeah.
I do want to give, a chance for you to introduce yourself in the podcast. This is episode 3 of Cerebral Zone is what it's called.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about who you are for people who will be watching you for the first time?
Yeah, my name is Jay Flores. I was made in America, but with Puerto Rican parts. My parents were the first to leave the island, and I'm the first grandchild on either side of the family, so I was the first one really going through everything here in the States. I was really curious as a child, and I was fortunate enough to have parents that allow me to explore that curiosity. When I would mess around with things, they wouldn't yell at me. I wouldn't get in trouble. They allowed me to explore, and they actually encouraged it. And I think that's what led me eventually towards engineering. I didn't really know what it was, but I knew that I wanted to do things that were challenging and experimenting with stuff.
Yep.
I did some time with Rockwell Automation when I got out of college after I studied mechanical engineering. And eventually with them, I was doing so much STEM outreach. I was really passionate about it. And they're like, "You're like our STEM ambassador." And I was looking at them too. I was like, that should be a thing.
Yeah.
And so I ended up creating that job there. So I pitched that role, and we created the first ever STEM ambassador job there. And I did that for 5 years until around pandemic time, where I created It's Not Magic, It's Science, and was doing some other creative work during that time where I couldn't do the traditional stuff I was doing with robotics and other programs. And that led to me starting Invent the Change. So Invent the Change is my business now.
I have the shirt. It fits me really well. I have it.
I appreciate your support.
Yeah.
All the merch I have, all that goes to supporting robotics teams. So last year, when you bought this shirt, that supported a team of girls in San Antonio, Texas, that were part of my Ninja Warrior run. They were amazing. The girls did really great job, and so I wanted to make sure that they had more funding to be able to keep growing and doing cool things.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Support Jay with Invent the Change shirts.
Appreciate it. And I've got something else for you, and if we could do a quick experiment,
let's do it. This is what Jay does. Let's see it.
I've got a little gift for you. So I've got an It's Not Magic, It's Science cup here. But the cool thing about it is that it's a magic color changing cup. So in this case, sorry, I got water on your table. Okay. In this case, yours turns pink. And it changes color with temperature. So that's something that's part of our kit that the kids receive. One of the items in there is the color changing cup.
Nice.
But another cool one that I really like is this one. It's just a paper clip, right? So I'm sure you've had a meeting before at some time that should have been an email, and you're just bored, and you're just sitting there like, what am I doing here? And you start deforming a paper clip. Or kids in school. I know I did this all the time in school when I was bored, and I was wondering why would I ever need to use this again in my life when
Yeah.
we were studying like Pythagorean theorem or whatever. So you've probably done this at some point, right? And then you probably try to put it back into its original shape. And sometimes you can get it kind of close, but it's kind of hard to get it exactly back to how it was. So when I'm able to take this and then just get it to go back to its original shape immediately.
That was so fast. What?
I'll do it one more time
I did
so
not
you can see it
expect that
again.
to happen. What?
So I'm gonna deform the paper clip, right? I just used my hands, so there's nothing in there that I could have swapped it out with. And I'm gonna get it to go back into its original shape.
What? What?
So what you might be able to see in the video, or if you as close to me as you are, you can see there's a little bit of water. So in here I have hot water.
Mm-hmm.
This is made out of an alloy called nitinol, nickel and titanium. It's also known as memory metal. So basically, this isn't your standard paper clip.
Mm-hmm.
I can show you actually with the spring a little faster. I mean, kind of like a slow motion version. So we stretch out the spring, right? If I try to push it back together, it's going to bend on me like that, right? But I can go in slowly into the hot water, and it starts coiling back into its original shape. So basically what happens is it has this transition temperature in which it was formed at. And once it reaches past that temperature again, it wants to go back into the original shape it was formed. That's why it's called memory metal. It remembers the shape in which it was formed. So this one was formed in a spring. This one was formed in the shape of a paperclip. And the reason why I use a paperclip is because your brain knows how a paperclip should behave, right? And you've probably done what I told you with deforming it before, right? So it's kind of like magicians, they kind of put you in this place and they play with what you're already expecting or where you expect something to come from. And so using the paperclip kind of blows your mind to that next level because you've done that. You know how it should behave.
Right.
And just by putting it in water, it shouldn't change shape. So that's one of the first experiments. Actually, it's the first experiment I ever did for It's Not Magic, It's Science when I started just on TikTok, and that went pretty viral. And now the kids, when they get their kit, it has, let's see if I can open this quickly. We've got a little version of the wire for them in here as well.
Nice.
So their version goes to like it straightens out. So I coiled it in there, but theirs will straighten out. So it goes the other direction, right? So most of the stuff in the kit is, and most of my experiments, because I wanted to make sure kids could do these things at home and get engaged right away and feel like they can be scientists, especially during the pandemic when there wasn't going to be access to a lot of these cool experiences and engineers coming to your school, stuff like that. Most of the stuff you could get easily online or for low cost at dollar store even.
Right.
But some items like this are a little harder to get, so I want to make sure that those are in the kit.
Those are, I mean, they blow your mind right away.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I definitely have bent a bunch of clips and, never thought I could put it in water and just spin back. But I guess, are these some of the experiments that you're doing with the event that you're here for with
So with Bad Bunny, we're doing a little bit different experiment because we wanted something big and so we're doing elephant toothpaste. I don't know if you've heard of that one before, but it's a really cool explosion type experiment.
Maybe I have
that
some.
looks like a big foam volcano, but it's like massive, right? And I actually just did it for my sister's gender reveal. My sister's pregnant, and we used that experiment for it. I had a little bit of a disaster with it, which we'll talk about at another time. But I had a backup, so everything turned out okay. Fortunately, I didn't ruin the surprise. We just couldn't tell what it was, so I had to redo it to make sure we could tell what it was.
So how did you get that opportunity with Bad Bunny? Like, what did you do to become a part of that?
Yeah, I was scrolling through TikTok, man.
TikTok,
no lie. And so kids, when your parents are telling you shouldn't be on these apps or you shouldn't be on YouTube, as long as you're on it for the right reasons, some really cool things can happen. So I was scrolling through TikTok, and there was an influencer that was working with Cheetos that was promoting the grant. And so that one caught my eye, and I follow random things too. I follow sports, and I do have my time on social media that sometimes isn't as productive. But in general, when I'm on social media, I'm trying to have some kind of value add to myself, whether
Right.
that's learning a skill or like learning about new things in the industry, following other STEM creators to make sure that, kind of I'm keeping my stuff up to date. And so I came across that one, and I think I had like that day to apply.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a video submission. So I was like, all right, this looks cool. It's Bad Bunny, it's Cheetos, like two epic brands.
Yeah.
It's $25,000 towards my business. Um, I might as well film a 1-minute video.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing some pretty unique stuff that I didn't think a lot of other people would be kind of submitting in that category of education
Mm-hmm.
and specifically STEM. So I thought I might have a chance to stand out, and it worked out, man. I took a couple, like an hour maybe to make my video, submitted it, and a couple months later I got the call.
Wow.
So they gave me a $25,000 check, as well as just some other like promo and support materials. And we'll see how the kind of partnership continues to go. I mean, this is another cool opportunity where we're kind of filming like a commercial type piece, which is going to be promoting the brand and the fund so that other people can have opportunities like this, but is also going to be putting me on the map as well,
Right.
as like the Boricua Bill Nye,
Hell
like
yeah.
the Puerto Rican Hispanic Bill Nye type thing. So I'm really hoping that that'll continue to open more doors, not just for myself, but for other kids that I can reach with these type of opportunities.
So you mentioned you started this, communication, like science communicator, with Rockwell Automation, right? I don't know if they still support you or you're still working with them, but when did you decide that this is the path that you wanted to take versus, going professional and having like a corporate job? Like, when did you decide to go the other way?
Yeah. I'm going to close this quick because I have a feeling that it's in the video. Like,
Yep.
yeah, so I started the STEM opportunity with Rockwell because I was just pursuing a passion. Like, it was something that when I realized that I had all these opportunities and not every kid was getting that, I was fortunate enough to have Rockwell in my community. The headquarters were like really close to where I was born and where I grew up. So there was these outreach programs that I benefited from even before I decided to work there. And without those, I don't know if I would have chose engineering, and definitely would have been much more difficult for me to actually persist through engineering. So I would go to these schools and I would speak to kids, and I would just realize that there's not only did they have a lack of STEM role models, a lot of them had a lack of role models, period.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, I rode my bike to this school. Like, this is a mile away from one of the top universities in the country, and these kids don't even have a single role model that looks like them. So when I had that experience, it just put me on this mission to reach as many kids as I could, to talk to as many of them about engineering or about just positive things. Like, whenever I could put STEM in there, I did, but in general, I just wanted them to see someone that was giving them a better path than maybe what they would have been going down otherwise. And that just turned into like, this is what I got to do. I want to do this all the time. So I was doing it as a volunteer with SHIP and First Robotics and all these other organizations. And it just became like a big chunk of who I was and what made me happy, I guess, was the impact through that. Mm-hmm. So what happened was that was the dream job. I set my dream job at Rockwell, but what happened was the pandemic shifted that kind of ability of what I could do in that role. And it became a lot less of the things that I loved about the role, going out to robotics events, traveling and connecting with kids. So I had to really shift. And when I had to shift more towards social media, towards videos, that's when, I figured I might actually be able to reach more kids if I'm kind of doing this as a free agent, as if I'm partnering with multiple brands and, doing these partnerships on different types of projects, creating my own experiments. It shifted to a point where all the benefits from having the role with Rockwell, which were still great, but it didn't outweigh the reach that I could get partnering with others and doing more. But Rockwell is still one of my biggest supporters. This past year, because I started the tour, we have a live tour that we go out to schools and do experiments and stuff. The last 12 months, Rockwell was the biggest supporter of kits.
Wow.
They had over 500 kits that they provided for kids at one of their partner science museums, as well as Milwaukee Public Schools. So huge shout out to Rockwell for both helping me get into engineering, helping me make an impact with them and their STEM programs, but then now also supporting my STEM programs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what about SHIP? We met at SHIP, and you're a speaker as well, and I see so many people approaching you. Yeah. And how did you get involved with SHIP?
That's another one of those stories where you don't know like what kind of opportunities you're missing out on until you start actually accepting opportunities. Like you're ready for them and you say yes to things instead of like always worrying. At beginning for me in college was like, I just have to worry about my grades, like only focus on class. And then once I started my sophomore year, I started saying yes to more of these opportunities to get involved with extracurriculars and organizations like SHIP. And so my whole freshman year, the president was like, you should join, you should be part of this event, you should go to this conference. And I just kept saying, no, I'm too busy, I can't do any of this stuff, right? Not realizing that I was actually like keeping myself back. And when I joined, I signed up for a leadership role because I was lucky that Rockwell, as part of my scholarship, gave me an internship my freshman year. Mm-hmm. And my manager was like, you did amazing for a freshman. You know, having an internship as a freshman is going to make your resume look great. You're involved with all these things that we did here at Rockwell, but you need to show a leadership position on your resume at college, right? You need to join an organization. You need to take on a leadership role and show that you can lead teams and take that kind of next level within your development in your career. And so I signed up for something right away at SHIP, and all that was left was presentation chair, which means going out and talking to kids at high schools, which is literally what launched that passion that we just talked about and took me into the career and what I'm doing now and what I'm comfortable with. So if it wasn't for that kind of role with SHIP, I don't know, I may have, I probably still would have done engineering and stuff, but I wouldn't have taken this path, which I really enjoy and super passionate about. And so then I started like saying yes to things. I was like, all right, national convention. Sure, I'll go to that. I didn't know we were flying to Phoenix. That was the first time I had ever flown without my family. Mm-hmm. We flew to Phoenix. We actually had a layover in LA. That was the first time I'd ever seen LAX. And that just blew my mind because we went from, our chapter was maybe like 15, 20 people on like max capacity to now seeing all these like huge chapters from like the University of Florida and from Puerto Rico and Texas and stuff like that, that it just opened my eyes to, yeah, I'm not the only one like out here that's trying to do these things. Because in my engineering classes, I was the only Hispanic, maybe one other sometimes in a large lecture hall at the University of Wisconsin. So that was a big eye opener for me, and I'm like, man, if all these people are trying to do some stuff, like we can actually make an impact. So I really wanted to get closer to the organization. Eventually got elected to the National Board of Directors, so I had an opportunity to be a student representative on the national board. So I made decisions that helped impact the future of the organization. I was actually on the team that helped remake the mission and vision statements back in 2011. So I basically kind of helped set the course for what the organization was going to do. So it gave me so much, and I also had the opportunity to give back a lot through those roles. And that's why I always stay super close to SHIP. And I'm glad we got to connect there.
Yeah, we got to connect. We met, the rest of the group that, we are now friends. And I got to say, thanks for connecting us, because you're one of the people that actually sends the group chat messages and sends such a positivity to everyone, and it's a good group to be a part of. And I feel great. Like there's days where I'm like not feeling so great, and all of a sudden I see these messages from all you guys, and I'm like, man, I'm glad that you guys are here, because it does make a difference in my days, and you're a big part of it. I think you started the whole group chat with everyone, and because if you wouldn't have done it, like I don't think any of us would have done it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I agree. Like I feel the same way whenever I see anyone sharing a win in there or asking for help. Even it's cool to see like when someone just asks a question and then someone else was like, man, like I had that same struggle and this is how I
Mm-hmm.
handled it. That's exactly what I wanted to see out of that group. And we get to party when we go to
Yep.
conferences and have fun and stuff like that too. But to see someone like get the support that they couldn't find in their community,
Mm-hmm.
and then have this community that we help put together, get them, an answer that helps them with their career or make money on a project or get a brand deal, like that is just, that gets me so excited.
Yep.
And it's taught me a lot in that process too, because people will bring stuff up and I'm like, man, I never thought about it that way. Maybe I should change, the way that I'm promoting myself or
Mm-hmm.
branding myself or going after these particular kind of STEM deals. And I feel like each one of us is going to be lifted by that. And I feel like too many people are, especially in spaces where you're trying to partner with organizations or whatever, they get competitive, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if someone else gets an opportunity, that means they're not going to get it. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's the case. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe there will be a day where you do compete for the similar project and you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. But in the end, I think more of us are going to get opportunities because we're supporting each other versus the one maybe project that we might take away from each other.
Right.
In the end, it's going to be better.
Yeah, those are all, the great things about social media. I personally been staying away from it lately, because I feel like it, um, I mentioned to you earlier that I kind of took the business approach, and it kind of takes away the fun. It
Yeah.
kind of, um, it literally takes away the fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
So,
feel you.
even mentally, like I just try to keep myself out of it a little bit. Like right now, have you had any experiences like that where you don't feel, the positivity, where you're actually feeling a little down or like anything like that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think people get too caught up in like the algorithm. If I
Mm-hmm.
don't post today, then I'm going to like lose followers or I'm going to lose views. And it's hard to like let that go sometimes, but if it's not funny anymore, it's not worth it. Like if
Right.
you hate it, like then why are you doing that as your job? Some people, they'll like leave a job in corporate to pursue social media, and then
Mm-hmm.
they burn themselves out, and then they hate that job too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to find that balance. And so I have a kind of a mixed approach. So I
Mm-hmm.
have, you know, physical products I sell, I have keynotes, I have social media, I have like different revenue streams, right, that I can focus on at different times. So when I'm really feeling good and I really want to get out there and talk to students and be out and about, and my family priorities are good, and I can feel like I can travel more, then I do that. Like last month was crazy travel for me, but it was like a good time for me and my family to do that. And then when I'm at home more, then maybe I can, film a couple experiments that we can put on social media and stuff, which is much harder for me to do when I'm traveling. So having that kind of balance of opportunities is one thing that can help. But at the very core of it, it's like you've got to be okay with that kind of like if it helps one person, then that's good enough.
Right.
Which is really hard in times where like people get millions of views on like a TikTok or something like that. But it actually happened to me once where my TikTok, it like glitched or something and everything showed as 0 views.
Mm.
And for a second, I like flipped out because this is when they were starting to put like money into it and stuff. And I was like,
Mm.
whoa, like what if, a company sees and I have 0 views on everything, and
Mm-hmm.
like what if they don't believe that it's a glitch? And I like freaked out for a couple seconds. But then I was like, man, like even if these videos got 1,000 views or 100 views or 10, like as long as kids are doing these experiments and like someone's learning from it, back in the day before social media, I would have been happy to see 100 kids doing my stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm getting thousands of views, and some that go more viral get a lot more than that. Then like I just had to remind myself of why I'm doing it, and that I would do it even if it was back in college when I only had 5 to 10 kids in the classroom,
Right.
some of them that maybe didn't even care at the beginning. That kind of just grounded me in that this is an awesome opportunity, and I can't get caught up on that kind of view
Right.
part of it.
Right. I mean, that's part of why I started showing myself. I was kind of hiding behind the,
Yeah.
the page. I felt like I was growing out of it. Like I don't want it to just be about memes. Like now I'm doing like, showing myself. I'm showing what I do. I'm doing podcasts now. I'm doing it just to I guess, show who I really am, not
Yeah.
just like hide. Like I have nothing to hide. If anything, I do want to be more supportive, like people like you, and people who want internships. We have interns that now they're not full time, so like to me, like that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Having an actual impact on people. Memes do that too. They make people laugh. But
I love your memes.
it's like it's still hard to keep up. It's a lot, and I don't do it about the numbers anymore. Like I used to look at, oh, it's growing, and it's like, but at the same time, I felt like I wasn't like getting like as much value out of it. So that's why I started showing my face and look. I met you. I met everybody else. Everybody in the group like knows who I am now. So I kind of appreciate me just getting out there.
And I think that's a big deal, because when I was looking for other influencers, other Hispanic influencers to put in the content creators to put into the group, I was kind of debating if I should add you, because I was like, is he him? Is he the page? Is it like a bunch of people that do the page? And fortunately, like, we heard, and I knew others in the group that did know you. And so it made sense. Like, yeah, it's Eduardo. He does this other stuff with automation. And that's when I started looking at your other things. And so when you put it out there, it helps those people that love what you're doing with memes, but also kind of understand, there's this guy behind it. He does these other really cool things, and they might be passionate about that kind of stuff too, or want to learn, laugh on some days, and then also learn about automation or other cool projects you're doing on other days.
It's actually pretty cool when you get calls from companies and they're like managers, and they're saying, oh, I follow your page, like I have a project for you, an opportunity. And I've gotten a few of those, and I bid them, and I'm like, wow, like this is turning into like real opportunities, real projects, real problems that I need to solve, and that's really my passion. So it's been way different now that you show your face. So I would encourage people out there who are not who are hiding behind the page. It's like, just show yourself. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm sure that differentiated you on those projects in a weird way. Like, because, just behind a proposal, it brings some life to it. It brings some character to it. If they know a little bit about you and they've interacted with you in other ways, it's just, if 2-3 things look the same, but, I kind of know this person, or this person made me laugh before. It sounds weird, right? But that could be what makes the decision.
Right.
There is, even with like hiring and stuff, I've heard tons of stories from recruiters that like, oh, this person had a role, or like a hobby or a volunteer role or something that just made them stand out because they had a connection there. The rest of the resume was pretty similar to other candidates, right? Especially at a big conference like a SHIP convention, where there's thousands and thousands of students all looking for, let's say to work for a particular company. When those little things kind of pop up, and you can have that conversation with a recruiter or someone that you're bidding a project with, like that can help make the difference.
Do you think social media is important now for students, or is it still kind of debatable in your mind?
I think it's extremely important. It depends on the platform, I think, obviously. So like a LinkedIn, the earlier you can get a LinkedIn, the better. I remember even in college, I was like, add all of your fellowship members or whatever organization you're a part of, add them. You don't know where they're going to be in 10 years, right? They might be a connection for you, or you might be a connection for them. So, I mean, LinkedIn for sure. And also, I feel like a lot of people that create STEM content sleep on LinkedIn. Like, they don't put as much effort. They put it more into the flashy, into the TikTok, into the Instagram.
I definitely don't.
LinkedIn is like where the real business is going to happen, right? That's where the decision makers are. It helps if they know that you're doing well on Instagram or TikTok, or you're creative and you can, kind of show those things. But a lot of my business has been in the LinkedIn DMs, more so than in like my Instagram DMs.
Wow.
And then on the others, I mean, it really depends on what your goals are. And I've given kind of workshops at colleges where I talk about leveraging social media. One from like making sure, for example, you're not doing a keg stand in your profile picture, like, stuff like that. Or, if you have a red Solo cup in your picture, we know that that's not water, right? Like those kinds of things, to make sure that they're ready for career fairs and stuff. But then I also talked to them about, well, you can use this as a platform to also showcase your projects or kind of make yourself stand out. And you might not get that job on Instagram, but it can be like a portfolio for you that you can share with people. It can be a place where you build your brand that eventually takes you somewhere later on. So I think it's important. If you want to be a more private person, that's okay too. It's not going to be like you can't get a job because you don't have an Instagram profile.
Right.
But it can definitely help differentiate you.
Yeah, it's hard to create content working for a company too, because you have to keep privacy, and you don't want to be sharing like trade secrets. And that's another thing that I struggle with. Is like, man, we're doing cool projects, and I can't really share them, So it's like, this defeat the whole purpose that I was trying to do,
Yeah, that's tough.
But yeah, it's
hard. I had some challenges with that, and I'd have to be like really general. So for example, I really liked using examples of roller coasters in automation, because that when you're talking to a kid, if you're talking to them about like a packaging line, that may or may not interest them, and they definitely most likely haven't seen one. But if I can talk to them about a roller coaster or like making toilet paper, for example, I try to use like things that they would use every day or that they've seen pretty often. And so I couldn't talk about exactly what things we're using and how we do it and everything, but I could talk in general about how roller coasters have like a PLC that's kind of like the brains of the roller coasters, and they have these sensors that are kind of like the eyes and know where the cart is and when to allow it to go, and those kinds of things in general terms to help keep you safe. But otherwise, if someone's out there and they're kind of just curious, can I do this? I mean, you could talk. I would start by just talking to. Most people would probably go to HR first. I would go to their social media department first and see what they're working on and if they need help with anything, because you can do stuff for the brand from your account though, so that you get the benefit of potential views and followers, but you kind of get that blessing from the company of hey, let's do this. And if it's a large company and they have a large account and they just end up sharing your stuff to their stories or doing collaboration posts, stuff like that, then that can help you build your brand while you're still making your employer happy, and eventually could lead to other kind of opportunities if that's what you choose to do.
Let's get into other questions.
Go for it.
No, I want to ask you a little bit about the future. What are you thinking with, your career, the path you're taking? Like, what does the future look like in your mind?
Yeah. I'm a person that does have long-term plans, but I do it in terms of big goals. So what I do every year, instead of like my 5-year, 10-year plan, because if you would have asked me my 5-year plan 5 years ago, I think anybody, because of the pandemic, nobody would have had it right. Like 0% chance of getting that right, over what happened in the last 5 years. But what I do every year is I set these game-changing goals. And what I call it overall is I call them REV goals, which stands for Reverse Engineered Vision Goals. So basically I set this big vision, like it's this goal that's like a game changer. So one of my first ones that I did when I first started doing this was to have a TED Talk. I was like, that would be a game changer for me. I'm trying to make my name out there as a speaker. If I get a TED Talk, like that would kind of elevate my brand and people might consider me more for like conferences or other opportunities. So that was like one of my big ones. And then from there, once I have like a list of about 10, I reverse engineer some of the steps that I would need to take each one of those. So for example, this TED Talk seems like this really big thing. You've probably, maybe met one or two people that have ever done one before. And that time I only knew one person that had ever done one. And it just sounded like this crazy, almost unattainable goal. But then I started breaking it down and I started to figure out, okay, well, like, I guess I have to like apply or something. So I checked out the website and it's like, oh yeah, there's all these like applications. You can apply for each city. You can do one in San Francisco or you can do the one in your local area. And so it started to make it like more feasible and attainable for me. And on each of those goals, I would start trying to like figure out what's the reverse engineering of it and start taking some of those steps each month. For some of them, they happen pretty quickly. Like the TED Talk actually happened really fast.
Wow.
Because there was one whose application deadline had actually ended. But it was the Miami one, and I was like, let me just try and submit and see if they'll still accept it. And I ended up getting picked for it.
Wow.
So that one happened really quick. There's others that took a lot longer, like Ninja Warrior, something that started 2 years ago in terms of actually competing on the show. I had been applying. That was the 10th time that I applied to get on the show. I'd been rejected so many times in so many different ways too. Because originally I would just show up. They had like a walk-on line. I didn't know you could even apply online, but my brother told me they were filming in Miami, and so I drove down to Miami. I was living in Tampa at the time, and I went and I came there, and I didn't make it because I got there too late. So the next year I went and I camped overnight, and it still didn't happen. And then I found out you could apply, so I applied, and I got rejected a bunch of times. Then a couple seasons they had like a lottery system for the walk-on, so I entered the lottery system, didn't get it. Finally, 10 years after, I finally got the opportunity to do that. So that rev goal had been on there for a long time. And every year I would write it down again, and I would try to figure out, okay, this year I'm going to try the lottery. Or this year what I'm going to do is really focus on making a high quality application video. Or, oh, last year they liked my story, but I didn't show enough fitness. And I would just make these adjustments. And I kind of revisit those goals. I try to do it every quarter. It's not like exact it has to be on this date of this month or whatever, but I relook at those and I write them down without looking at my previous ones. And that's what helps me prioritize like what's really what I should be doing now, what really matters to me. And also like some of them, this one isn't as important anymore, or I haven't been really making progress here. Let me focus on these. And so it's allowed me to have several game-changing, life-changing moments in a shorter period of time, because instead of saying like, oh, I'm going to be this on this date of this year, and it doesn't go that way, it's fine. I just keep working on several of these big goals, and eventually I'm going to break through on them.
Yeah, it's very powerful to write your goals. And I like your approach to reverse engineer them. My approach was similar, where I write my goals and prioritize. I sort of write what's important to me, like everything that is important to me. And then if there are distractions, right? If there's things that make me think whether I should do it or not, it's like, is this part of my goals or my priorities? Yeah. Then I say no. And it's easy for me to just kind of stick with it, right? Once you write them down and you're like, oh wow, this is not part of my goals, like I should probably, focus but yeah, I like the reverse engineering approach, because not only am I writing it, I'm also writing, how I'm gonna get there, and you start researching and you actually start taking action towards it.
Yeah, because anyone can say, oh, I want to be a millionaire, right? And anyone can write that down and tell the universe or whatever. But if you're not taking the steps, you're never going to get there. So that aspect of it is what really changed the game for me. Because I've always had big goals, but it was that breaking it down into smaller chunks and actually taking steps towards it, taking real meaningful action is what made some of those things, happen. And some of them happen quick. Like I said, some of them happen pretty fast. Some of them take forever, but it's way more likely to happen if you do it that way.
I had this crazy idea of, I had this meme page, and I was thinking, you know what? I think I can start a company with the people in the page. I'm like, I can ask people like, hey, you guys want to work? Like, it doesn't matter where you're at, depending on what it is, right? And that's kind of how it all started too here. Like, it was kind of a crazy idea. Like, I think I can do this. Hardest thing I ever done in my life. And things are going good, but I think the stress is kind of taking over sometimes.
Okay. Yeah, I feel you. Running a business is sometimes extremely rewarding. Sometimes it's like you traded your 9 to 5 for a 24/7.
Exactly. Like, there's no days off. Yeah. Like, weekends you're working. Like, but I wake up feeling amazing and happy and motivated, self-motivated. Yeah. Something that used to not happen before. Like, I was just tired for some reason. But yeah, I mean, I think it's rewarding, and everybody should at least try it, right? Yeah. You're trying it. I'm trying, and hopefully in 10 years we're more influential in our industries.
And nowadays with social media and everything, and even the world getting smaller with technology, whether that's traveling or communication or like having bigger audiences because of social media, it's one of the best times to go into entrepreneurship or follow your passion and start a business. And that can start small as a kind of a passion side project, or you could go all in and you've got this big crazy idea and go after it. One thing that helped me was was my involvement with the student organizations, because I had started doing STEM outreach since I was, 19 years old as part of the organization, and I was able to leverage their resources and their name and their branding in the community and stuff, right? And then when I stepped into Rockwell and I did outreach on behalf of them with organizations like First Robotics, I leveraged those same tools to be able to do it, now getting paid by Rockwell, but also still, leveraging their brand and their resources as I started building mine. And so by the time I was ready to go off on my own, I already had all of the connections. I already had the credibility, and it made all of those things that much easier. So if someone's out there just thinking, like, yeah, I'm really passionate about this, or I like what Eduardo's doing or what Jay's doing, just start doing it as like a side hustle or a volunteer project or whatever it is that you can kind of get your feet wet with. And as you start growing there, it becomes much more realistic and I don't want to say easier, but like it removes some of those barriers that you would have if you just said, oh, today from my normal engineering job, I'm going to go and start making peanut butter, right? Like something totally random. If you don't make that kind of connection and build that brand earlier, it's going to be much more difficult to make that jump.
I have another crazy idea.
Go for it. I want to hear all your crazy ideas.
No, I just think of us, right? Our group of influencers or content creators, and I just wonder sometimes, like, what can we do, right, together if we really came together, and everybody in the group has different ideas, different energies and different influences. What do you think we can do as a group?
That's a good question. So when I created the group, I just thought of it as support, right? Because when I started speaking, like I had no idea what to charge or like who to, how to send an invoice. Like I had never done any of that. It sounds so stupid now, but it's like I didn't know any of those little things. And I've been able to talk to some of the people in the group that are in that stage of where I was back then and eliminate some of those roadblocks for them that were kind of unnecessary. The only reason I had them is because I didn't have a mentor or role model in that space. So initially it was just to like remove roadblocks, share best practices. I wanted to share opportunities in there, put money in people's pockets, stuff like that, and support each other when things got confusing or hard or, stressful, because it is wild. But I love that you're thinking like, how do we take that next level? Like what is it a company? Is it a conference maybe that we create on our own? Is it one thing I actually, this is something I actually have thought about that I haven't talked to enough people about, what I want to do is like public service announcements that we create that showcase, for example, like trilingualism. So in the Hispanic community, coding as a second or third language, right? Being able to speak English, Spanish, and know some kind of coding language, right? That's a game changer for our community. And there's so many kids in the Hispanic community that are in that K-5, K-12 space that if we shift the value of that in our community, that's a complete game changer for the community and a complete game changer for the country, because that's going to be the majority of kids in, 2035, 2050, whenever the actual date is. So stuff like that where we're influencing change. And we're seeing that with Katia with her space camps in Mexico. And, each of us is kind of doing that in our own way. But, like, how do we come together to put this kind of unified message out there of, like, this is what's really important for our community. Not what social media says, not what Telemundo and Univision say. Like, what should be celebrated and what's actually going to be a game changer for our community, and putting it out there and leading the way. The other thing is, like, I want more, like, fun science stuff on TV. Whether that's something like a Junkyard Wars type show or there's all these, like, baking shows. Like, I think more like a fun engineering competition show could be out there. I'd love to have It's Not Magic, It's Science as like a live show on a Netflix or a Nickelodeon even. I don't know what platform yet, but I'd love to see us take what we're doing in social media and take that to TV and beyond, bigger opportunities like that.
That sounds like a great idea. The real engineering world.
Yes, I like that. I think we would do pretty well on a show like that.
For sure. It would be really interesting to see everybody and Everybody has such a cool personality. Like it really is, like a little TV show.
Yeah, some cool projects and challenges during the day, and then some fun stuff afterwards.
I mean, you're right. I think more shows like that would be cool, where you see the real, what is it like to be an engineer. It is a niche thing that we're doing. It's all STEM. Yeah. So I think just that right there is really powerful. I don't know why people make it boring on TV. Why is it boring on TV? It's like they put some ridiculous stuff on it that I'm just like, where's the smart?
I don't get it, and it's crazy because engineers are really, really good at making really cool things sound really, really boring.
Right.
Because we overthink it, we put our acronyms in there, and you forget that, this 7-year-old or third grader, whatever, whoever you're talking to has no idea, hasn't been in your brain and doing what you've been doing for their whole life. And there's really cool things that you could show them and talk to them about, but we kind of put it at this jargon that doesn't get through there. And that's another thing I want to do with It's Not Magic, It's Science, because eventually I'm going to run out of experiments that look like magic that you can do in your house, right? That are safe for kids to just pick up and do. I want them to be able to take this and go and do it at home with their parents. And the experiment cards that I have, they have QR codes on them that go to my website so they can watch videos about it. And so I see after one of my shows, I see the traffic spike. I'm like, okay, the kids are actually going and opening the kit and doing it. And so my last show was in Milwaukee with Rockwell, actually, the last week of school, the second last day of school. And I still saw a traffic spike that day. And every day after that for like 2 weeks, I stopped looking. But I saw kids still going in. And so if that convinced them to do science when school's over, like when it's the end of the year, most kids just want to like forget school and do, I don't know, play games or go outside or whatever. I was like, kids are excited by this. You just have to present it in the right way. And so what I'm thinking is it's kind of like a how it's made type show. But like you said, if you're not already in the industry, if you don't know about automation already and like geek out on it like you and I can, that show is very dry.
Right.
A third grader is going to go to sleep. They're going to not want to do engineering if you tell them like, oh, it's like the show How It's Made, and you show it to them. Like even the episode that I watched about brownies, about how brownies are made, somehow they made brownies boring. I was like, this one has got to be a good one. No, it's just so dry in the narration and everything they're doing. So I'd love to have like a kid's version, and they're like, oh, how does a car drive itself? I'm like, oh, well, it's not magic, it's science. And we go in like a kid-friendly tone with lots of visuals and fun examples of things that they see every day, but don't necessarily know how it works, and they're curious about it, and go out there and give them those answers, but in a way that's meant for them. And I think something like that could be huge, not just for like actually do well on TV, but that actually could change the game and inspire a lot of future engineers.
Yeah, I have to say, I was paying attention to the radio and also like TV, let's say like Univision. And sometimes what they would talk about, it would really bother me because this is what we're listening to, right? Yeah. Like my community. And it did bother me just because it's not educational. If anything, it's like the opposite. Yeah. And when I started realizing that, I just started, I don't even listen to the radio station anymore, Same thing with like TV. And I do worry because if people are just getting fed like this thing, whatever this is, it's just going the opposite, and so many people are watching. But yeah, how do we make it fun? Like, how do we make it so that it's interesting? It seems like a little bit of hands-on would be important, right? Because one thing is watching and another thing is actually doing it. Maybe it's a place, a big place, maybe like here, bigger. That's kind of what I would envision sometimes, is this huge place where we all come in, like everybody starts, they have their own little areas. You create your own content, you create your own experiments. We can invite people to come and we document, people's faces or kids' faces or things like that. But if I was to explain it, I'd probably be boring. So that's my struggle there, okay. But I think showing people would be cool. How to the approach, the engineering approach, like why is this solution? Why am I leaning towards this solution? What technologies exist already? Why reinvent the wheel when it's already there? Just things that people should know. I think a lot of the things or a lot of the reasons people don't know stuff or don't try things is probably because they don't know where to buy it, right? Or they don't know the basics.
Yeah.
So getting them up to speed will be important, and maybe finding those kids that are good at public speaking and more energetic and can simplify the wording, So that's one of the things that, if you remember, I was doing Women in STEM Wednesday with Sandra and Emily. Shout out to both of them.
Yeah, miss you guys.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about something like that where, maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be me, the one that's speaking. It has, can we find someone that, who's passionate about it? And we never really like pushed it, but that was just kind of an idea,
Okay.
But yeah, my crazy idea was kind of like get a big place for us to come together and make it happen.
That would be really cool. And this is actually an idea. I had a similar idea if I ever won the lottery. And are you familiar with, what was it, Fantasy Factory? Rob Dyrdek, the skateboarder? He had this show called, I think it was called Fantasy Factory. Basically, I don't know, he's really successful in skateboarding and then started building his own brand. He had several TV shows. He's really good business-minded person. But one of the things he did with the Fantasy Factory is he had this giant skate park in like a warehouse. But in the outside of the skate park, he built offices. And so he had his office there, and like some of his best friends and people that were also on the show, he allowed them to build their businesses within that same space too. And so that's what I would do if I ever won the lottery. And like, I'm not just going to I'm going to take care of my family, right? And I'm going to take care of my friends, but I'm not just going to give you a pile of money because that's not necessarily going to help everyone. But my thought was I would take a certain amount of money to invest in each of them in their passions or their businesses or whatever project they want to bring to life. And not necessarily with the expectation that they would turn it into something super profitable, but at least something that like they could sustain themselves or like make an impact, right? Some of it could maybe be more philanthropic than their career-wise. But I was like, create this space where they have the resources that they need in order to help that business thrive. And the other thing I wanted to do with that was create kind of like this experience where you have all the experts that you need. So I work with an organization called Make 48. It's a TV show that's filmed for PBS, and now it's on Roku. And I hosted their season 5, and we'll be hosting next season as well. And what they do is they bring in anybody from the community. It could be kids, it could be teachers, engineers, a mix. And they have a design competition, but they surround them with expert welders, expert CNC machinists, people that can do all kinds of different hands-on skills to create the prototype. So it could be anybody with any level of experience. All you need is an idea and to be able to communicate it to what they call the tool techs, which are the experts that have all the resources to make their prototype real. And so one of the projects that was at the first show that I hosted is now on Kickstarter, and they're making a legit project after just 48 hours of creating a prototype. Obviously, they had to do stuff after that to make the company and to work with manufacturing and stuff. But they went from just coming together, 3 friends from work, to then leaving 48 hours later with a prototype that is now a business, like a legit business. Is going to be sold in stores all across the country.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, something like that where we take all these great minds, we put them together, and then we provide other little experts that can help kind of bring it all to life would be amazing.
That sounds like a really good idea and very doable too. I mean, here at Loomis, we design machines, and if somebody comes up with a great product idea, and if we can mass produce it somehow, that's very doable. That's really up in our alley. So,
and you've got space to do like stuff like this podcast about it, right?
We can do whatever.
Here's the new idea that came in this week, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, submit your inquiries. Like, what kind of ideas do you have? Like, just pick the top 10 ideas, and let's all collaborate, all of us. Like, let's bring our brains together. Can we do this? It's very powerful if we could do something like
You're
that.
giving me another TV show idea, and I know people have done this on YouTube and stuff. So maybe it's not brand new idea, but I'd love to see. I saw this recently that Lego did. They had a kids. They had kids submit a story, and then they brought the story to life with Lego animation. And so this kid's crazy, wild, story where there's a police chase, and then randomly the car goes through the house, and like whatever, like a little first grader was thinking about, they then brought to life with Lego animation. So imagine like something similar to that, where kids come up with product ideas, or I know I wanted like a Nerf gun that could shoot extra bullets or stuff like that when I was a kid.
Right.
Like I wanted to redesign my toys. Imagine if they could come in and say like, "Hey, I want something that does this, this, and that," and we could have like a group of people actually come together and see if they could make that possible for that kid.
I think if not only would it be, I think also part of my idea was to, obviously promote it to the whole world, all of our platforms, and there might be people reaching out to us who can provide those tools to make it happen, right? Like I don't have CNC machines here, but maybe somebody else in the community does and is willing to do it, that believes in the idea.
Yeah.
And maybe it's kind of like a Shark Tank, but for for ideas, right?
Exactly. It's like taking that the idea to prototype stage.
And then as you're promoting it, I mean, you're already promoting the product. I think we might have to look into patents and all that first, but before we start sharing things. But yeah, man. Actually, talking about patents, I did actually file my first patent this year.
Congrats, man. That's huge. That's a big deal.
Yeah, first patent, and just trying to protect the technology. I mean, you saw it earlier.
Yeah, that's cool stuff.
And so we would have to be careful with all that, because I don't even share the stuff that I, that I have there.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that Make 48 does, is in addition to like the welders and the CNC machinists to help out, they also bring in patent attorneys that can help the teams say, oh wait, maybe you should think of a different idea because this thing is showing up as already being used, or oh no, this actually looks like something that you could defend. Or I saw one case where it was kind of like in a gray area, and so like, I mean, you can pursue this idea if you want, but there is a chance that this big company might come after you, so you might want to explore other options as well. So that kind of stuff is that's not taught in school. Right. That's not even in college sometimes, unless you're taking a course that's kind of focused on entrepreneurship or on the business side. They don't really teach you a lot of that stuff in engineering school, so
right,
that's really important and super valuable.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not taught anywhere in school. I actually was hearing of one of our family members, one of my girlfriend's family members, was talking about how some kid got in trouble because they brought they were selling some kind of, I don't know what it was exactly, like a candy or like something. Like he was just kind of like just reselling it, maybe
just hustling.
Yeah, hustling. I'm like, they got mad. Like they got in trouble. They called the mom. Your kid is selling this and that, and I'm like they should almost have some kind of encouragement on that. Yeah. Don't say that's wrong. It's like, why don't you give them a chance? And I'm not saying, let them sell whatever they want, or maybe it's like a practice. You might find something in people that they don't even realize.
Yeah, there might be rules like you can't sell in the middle of class, or like I don't know what the rules are around that stuff. But I feel like too many times in school, even sometimes with parenting, we overdo it and you squash some of that passion or interest or creativity and curiosity, right? So like I mentioned in my intro, I was blessed to have parents that allowed me to explore my curiosity and my creativity. And I'll give you an example. My parents just retired and they moved down to Florida, and they brought down all the VHS tapes and all that stuff. So we got to watch some of our like home videos from when we were little. And there's one from when I was 3, and I was designing an airplane, right? It sounds crazy, like this 3-year-old designing an airplane, some kind of prodigy, right? No, it was made out of couch cushions. I was basically redesigning the couch, and I was designing it in my mind as an airplane. And I was telling my dad, like, this is the airplane, and this is where the pilot goes. And I made an airplane for him too. Most kids would have got in trouble when they took the first couch cushion off. Like, what are you doing with that? Put it back. I cleaned the house, blah, blah, blah. Like,
Right.
leave it organized. Instead of yelling at me for it, my dad decided to grab the camera and, like, record me doing that. Let's see.
Thank you. Yeah.
I always get two. So
Yeah.
mine's always like at least two. So he decided to start recording me and like celebrate that and tell me my design was cool and that my airplane was gonna fly awesome and do all these things, right? If I didn't have that encouragement in that time, other times where I got curious ideas or I wanted to explore things, I might not have had the opportunity to do it. I might have been more worried about getting in trouble than exploring playing with the giant box or stuff like that. So I had those opportunities to do that. And a lot of times as parents, we don't allow our kids to get into that space. We don't allow them to get messy. We don't allow them to take things apart or rearrange the couch cushions, when that's just kids trying to be engineers, trying to experiment and find out how they can create the world in a different way. That's huge for their future development. And same with teachers. Sometimes I feel like, and it's not teachers' fault, right? There's so much pressure. They don't have the right resources. Everything's around a standardized test, et cetera, right? But sometimes just like exploring in a way, I wish, for example, that labs in school, I wish you didn't have to do it like a worksheet. I feel like every lab, you're just trying to like go through the steps and find the right answer, and it becomes like a task instead of fun. Whereas if you could be like, okay, here's a bunch of science stuff, here's a general idea of some of the concepts you might be learning or that we've been studying, play around with this. Like, I feel like that would have been so much more fun. Yeah, do some research, figure out how to do something like this. It doesn't have to be exactly, and you don't have to give me the exact answer and numbers. It's just like, find out what happens when you do X or Y or Z. And that would be so much more fun and encourage me to want to learn more versus being worried about if I got the answer right or wrong. And I feel like that's so important in business in real life, because we don't know the answers, right? When you're trying to create a new product and innovation, something like your patent that's never been done before, you don't know the answer that you're going to get. You have an idea of like what you're trying to accomplish and you have to play around with it, but you're not worried about filling in the blanks on a worksheet. Right. So that's like much more real life.
Right. Yeah, that is real life. Kind of reminds me of, yeah, I mean, some teachers, it's not their fault. They're probably stressed out. But sometimes it's a little ridiculous, why you would get a kid in trouble. There's a teacher I remember back in junior high that all I did was say, "Hey, teacher." It's like, "Don't call me hey. Call your mom. Call your mom right now." And she made me call my mom, and she I guess she made me tell my mom that I called her hey, like that was respectful. I'm like, I said, "Hi, hey, teacher," and my mom was confused on the phone. She was confused, and like, because you called her hey, like you got in trouble. Yeah, and like I'm literally on the phone with my mom, like in trouble because I said, "Hey, teacher." That's ridiculous.
Like, I don't understand. Yeah. There's no logic to that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what it feels like, especially as a kid.
But I remember it, Mm-hmm. I remember it. Like, till this day, I'm like, why did I get in trouble for that?
Yeah. And one of the sad things, and I was lucky in this situation, I had some teachers that actually pushed me into like harder classes, because I was the only kid from my middle school that ended up going to the high school that I went to. So I didn't know like what classes to pick or whatever. And so I went and I chose like all the easiest sounding ones, like English 9, like the basic stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But my school was an IB school, which is similar to advanced placement AP classes, but an international version. And so like you could get like a full IB certificate if you took, a certain amount of IB classes. And like there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know about that could really help me in getting into the colleges I wanted to get to, and just like kind of challenging myself and being kind of the best I can be. And so I was in this English 9 class, and I'll never forget Mr. Doctor. He's my favorite English teacher ever. And I chose engineering because I never wanted to write a paper again. But my favorite teacher is probably an English teacher. Um, he was like, I think you can, challenge yourself more. And I want you, after this semester, after the first semester, freshman year, to transfer into the pre-IB class. Like, he took the effort and the time to like push me in that direction into something I didn't know. And then he also sat down and talked to the other teacher that I was being transferred to say, hey, this is why I think you should be in your class. He might need a little help getting up to speed because he wasn't here this first semester, but I think he's going to thrive in your class. And then she took the initiative to help me catch up with what the other kids had been learning in the previous semester and, do what I needed to do. And that changed my life completely because that then put me on track to be able to do pre-IB, which put me on track to like think more positively and about myself and goals and what I can accomplish, and ultimately, led me to be able to get into better colleges and go after bigger goals. And it was that like person just giving me that little nudge, versus sometimes people get the opposite. Like just for the smallest thing, like saying, "Hey, teacher," they already start labeling you or like kind of pushing you and down in a way, versus uplifting you. Let's say they thought that's disrespectful. I don't think it is. Let's say they did think it was disrespectful. Why can't they just help you then introduce yourself or ask for attention in a better way, right? Uplift the kid.
Call me miss.
Yeah, I would appreciate if you would call me X, Y, or Z. And I think, this is the respectful way you should do it to other people, and they'll appreciate that from you. And, maybe you take that to heart, and, you introduce yourself and people are like, oh, wow, he's so eloquent and he's so nice. And that then is a ripple effect that's positive, versus the ripple effect that like it still bothers you to this day that this teacher made such a big deal off of something so small. And also it was like the negative intention or the way that they did it of just trying to get you in trouble versus actually trying to help you.
Yeah. I did participate in the Academy of Finance in my high school. Cool. Nothing to do with engineering. As a matter of fact, I didn't know I wanted to be an engineer. I was just taking computer classes. They were showing me how to use, Excel, Word, how to put together my resume. They showed me how to, look at the stock, investing. Like we did some testing on, fake money, and then you would invest in the stock. And at the end of the semester, or, who's doing the best. So they taught me like all that. And yeah, my mentality changed too, because they made us dress for success.
Okay.
So that, became a little more professional. They guided me through high school to up until I graduated. So it was like teachers that, kind of get to know you throughout the years, and they kind of look at you. I think those programs do have a big impact, and I'm glad I was a part of it, even though it wasn't STEM related. But like all my teachers, those teachers did see me like, okay, Eduardo's gonna be. I can see he's gonna go to school. Like super supportive. Even when I wanted to ditch, they were like okay with it. They were not gonna tell me anything. He's a senior. This guy's good.
He's doing fine.
He's doing fine. He can ditch.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's I think my teachers did like me and respected me, and they saw like something in me too.
So how did you end up choosing engineering though? Was it because of those computer classes, or was it something else?
All I knew is that I had to take more math.
Okay.
And I did. I have like this story of when I was a kid, like playing in Mexico, because I lived in Mexico for almost 6 years. I was playing in the dirt, like cars, like Hot Wheels. I don't even think they were Hot Wheels. They were like cheaper because I'm in Mexico. I'm not gonna get Hot Wheels. It's fancy. But I remember, playing with them, making roads, making like bridges, putting water in certain areas like a lake. And I remember I wanted the bridge to open. I wanted the bridge to, let the boat go through or something. And at that moment, I'm like, I still remember that day. And when I went to college, I took Mech 140, which is Intro to Machine Design, with my professor Nick Repinich, and we built a pencil tester, which would look for the lead to see if a pencil had a lead or if it was sharpened, you know. So I
Yeah.
was detecting the the length of it. Really, it was the length,
Okay.
and it was kind of working. It was pretty much working, you know. Maybe like 90% of the time was working, and I was just like, this is what I want to do for sure. Like
That's cool.
first class of college, I know I wanted to do mechanical, but there was also mechatronic, you know, the
Hmm.
combination of mechanical, electrical, which I think fits more of, you know, what I really wanted to do, I guess. Either way, I'm thankful of doing mechanical engineering. That's totally fine. But now all I do is electrical. Electrical. I do a lot of mechanical now with the business, but I started my career in electrical and, you know, some software.
Okay.
So
That's huge. I
yeah,
mean, being able to have an experience like that, that's like an intro that then shows you what it's really about, because you don't really get exposed to it as much earlier on, unless if you have some kind of mentor or role model that was, already in engineering, or you got to do like a cool plant tour or something like that.
yeah. I mean, yeah. No, no. I was the first. I have some cousins in Mexico that went to university, but you know, well, I'm not actually. One did industrial engineering. She's like 2, 3 years older than me, and then it was me who graduated from college from the U.S. And now, like, there's more. There's more of us, more
That's
cousins
awesome.
that got through university. So the you know the sacrifices our parents did definitely I think paid off. Um, but yeah, man. Did you live in Puerto Rico?
No, I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, of all
Hmm.
places. So my parents actually met in Florida, even though they're both born and raised in Puerto Rico. They both wanted to improve their English for going to school in the States. So
Mm-hmm.
my mom already had her undergrad, and she wanted to get her master's in the States, so she had to improve her English to take her master's over here. And then my dad wanted to apply to Embry-Riddle to be a pilot.
Mm.
But my when they decided they wanted to get married, my dad decided to drop out and enter the military so he could support a
Mm.
family. So he kind of made that sacrifice. I was in the army for about 5 years, and my mom postponed her graduate school during that process so he could be with him. They actually got married because my dad was going to get sent to Kuwait during that time, and so fortunately he didn't get sent, and everything worked out. But they had kind of like a early marriage, I guess, because of
Kuwait.
that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that would have been interesting. But once my dad finished his service, then they decided my mom was going to apply to a bunch of schools, and Milwaukee gave her the best scholarship. So they
Wow.
moved from Fort Hood, Texas, where my dad was stationed, to Wisconsin, having no clue what it was going to be like, how cold it was going to be, and all that. And right before she graduated with her master's, she had me around that same time. And so they ended up deciding to stay in Milwaukee because she had a job offer there. As my mom's was a elementary school psychologist, so I think I get kind of the mix. My dad had a technical side, but from military service, not from college, and my mom had like working with kids and people. So I think I get that's the mix I kind of got, was
Mm-hmm.
like I wanted to do STEM stuff, but I also wanted to work with kids, and so I found kind of that perfect space to do it with everything I do now. Um, but yeah, so that's how I ended up being born in Milwaukee of all places. At 2.5 months old, I was already on
Mm-hmm.
a plane to Puerto Rico, but I wasn't born there. And then I lived there for a while. I did study abroad there, and I say
Okay.
that with air quotes because my family's from there. I'd been there tons of times, but I wanted to see what life was like living and working there instead of just going to visit family and going on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a semester in Puerto Rico, and then I did an internship there as well with Rockwell. So I got to have that kind of college and work life experience there. And it was actually one of the most important parts of my life because I was with my youngest cousin, who was at the time with just his mom. He was, kind of growing up in a single mother household, and I got to kind of be that role model for him. I was 19, he was 7, so I was like old enough to be kind of like what do you call that? A male role model,
Mm-hmm.
but also young enough to still be, really
Yep.
close to him. and he's actually now studying engineering at in Puerto Rico. So he's doing industrial now, which is pretty cool. Um, but that time with him was like a big influence on not just being able to set that example for him and introducing him to those kind of things and talking to him about engineering, but then me also realizing like the impact I could have on more people if I found ways to kind of teach similar things that I was teaching him to other kids.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting when people talk about like their parents and them having like an education or like something like that. And I think like in my case, my parents were not like educated. They came from Mexico, very humble people, and also um, how difficult it is to not listen to them sometimes, because sometimes it's not like they don't know, but um, sometimes they would question why I left for school.
Okay.
And I'm like, like I'm doing it for me. Like parents, like, they know that this is what I had to do, right? Like that's all my mom knew. It's like she doesn't really understand what I do.
Yeah.
She just knows I work with machines, and robots. But just to try to get out of that mentality, right, from like the household, because you're in that mentality, and they were not the type of people that are gonna just go start a business, so trying to not upset them, that is like, mom, I can't go this weekend because I'm like working. And there was a time where my mom cried because I didn't go. But mom, I'm like trying to do this, and they might not understand. There's a lot of kids like that, some interns that go through here that they tell me about their stories from their house. Like, oh, my dad, like he wants me to go work. He does construction. He wants me to go get my license so that he can use the license and make more money. But that kind of shifts their mentality, right? Like this guy wants to be a computer engineer, but his parents keep telling him, do this for us, So I just see like a little bit of, not necessarily like an advantage, but like differences, right? In people's lives, and how impactful it is to have people, with some kind of background. I lived in Mexico 6 years. I'm not saying that I didn't learn a lot, but I mean, it taught me a lot about life, like living in Mexico, my parents, the way they live, where they come from. I mean, 6 years in Mexico you're going to remember that. I was a kid too. I pretty much grew up there. I was raised there. Little town. And again, like if you were to go back there, it's like going back in time almost. Like time doesn't move too quick. And if I were to stay there, like I can see my life here. It's like, oh shoot, I appreciate, the opportunities that I have now. And it makes me work harder too, because I saw it, I saw like that side. And thankfully I was born here in the US, and I'm able to come and get my education. And, yeah, I want to be able to help people that are in that type of household where, it's hard to get out of it. Your parents are not going to support you, or maybe they just can't support you for you to go to school and live in a dorm. So it's, if I can open more doors to people like that, that's kind of what I want to do. I mean, you can tell by their personality, how they are. I'm like, okay, this guy really needs guidance here, because if not, he's not going to make it. Like, I know he's not. Like, so yeah, I just can't let those students, just drop out.
That's huge that you can see that too, because it takes a lot of people don't have empathy for that, and I don't know if it's because they can only see their world, but I think in a weird way it's a challenge for us. what our families and generations have been through, but it's also kind of a superpower because you understand their sacrifice, like, and how hard they work to get you to be able to have these opportunities. But you also now, maybe not right away, but we also now see these, what we need to do to get to the next level. And I feel like some people, sometimes if you haven't seen the sacrifice, you're just like, oh, I'm just going to, do my thing. But I feel like your parents' sacrifice probably fueled you to want to go to the next level. And it hurts when your mom cries because that, and you never want to see your parents in that situation, but you're doing it for the right reason, and they might not see it right away, but eventually, hopefully she does, and maybe she is already seeing it. And I mean, that's kind of how it's been for me, is just like, I feel like I was born in the perfect spot because my parents struggled a lot, but by the time I was like old enough to ever like realize any struggle, we were already kind of in a better spot. And then also when things weren't as good, or when my mom was, or when my dad didn't have like the best jobs, I still had the basic things I needed from them. The basic support and love and guidance and whatever, right? Even if I didn't have everything in the world, I had things that I needed. And so once I recognized like how deep of sacrifices they made so that me and my sister could have a better life, that just like was a fireball under me to make sure that other kids could have that. Because as I was going out into the community and meeting these kids, and just like, I remember one time in particular, the kids asked me this was one of my first presentations ever. The kids asked me where I was from, and I was like, oh, I'm Puerto Rican. And one of the kid goes like, that's interesting because you're the only Puerto Rican I know that's standing up. And I was like, what do you mean by standing up? And he's like, well, I'm Puerto Rican too, and all the Puerto Ricans I know in my community are involved in something negative, like drugs or gangs, or just not doing great things. And again, this is the same kid I talked about earlier. A mile away, I rode my bike there, and this kid doesn't have a single role model that looks like him. So that's why I try to get out into community as much as I can. And when I work with my partners, I try to encourage them to pick bilingual public schools. One, I want to reach public schools so that the kids that really need it, the kids that aren't already getting a science kit every month from their parents, because otherwise you're checking a box, you're not moving the needle. If you're just getting stuff out to the kids that are already signing up for this stuff, you're not changing the game, you're just checking a box. And I really want to change the game. And also bilingual public schools, because that's more likely that I'm going to be able to interact with kids that can really connect to my background and see themselves in the future and see someone that looks like them. I didn't see any scientists growing up that looked like me, not even in TV or movies. And if it was a scientist in a movie, it was probably something like Narcos or something that was like negative impact of what science could do. So like being able to see that is huge. But then also when I was designing the experiments during the pandemic, there's one in particular I wanted to do that it uses a lot of milk. And I was like, what if a family is food insecure during this time and the kid gets in trouble because they use a bunch of milk in the experiment that they saw me do on TikTok or whatever. And that just like grounded me, and like everything I need to do needs to be designed with that kid in mind. I can't remove every barrier, but like I need to design from the beginning to make it as easy as possible. So like the kit has a lot of things like baking soda, vinegar, things that's very low cost, but I can still create experiments that are going to blow your mind, just like this one. This one costs a couple dollars, right, to get the wire on Amazon or whatever. But most of my experiments you can do with a couple cents. What was the show I was doing? I was preparing for Ninja Warrior this season. I was preparing my experiment for Ninja Warrior this season. I got almost everything except for one thing from the dollar store. For an experiment that's going to be shown on NBC, that's live to millions of people and on their app and everything, right? All I needed to do is go to the dollar store to blow people's minds and grab one other item off of Amazon, but still low cost. And so that allows me to reach kids way more. And if they get the kit and they run out of baking soda or vinegar from the kit, it's going to be pretty low cost for them to keep exploring. And the items like this, like the memory metal, as long as they don't lose it, they can use it forever. And so I'm trying to build these experiences that like reach all kids. And that's also why I chose magic, because whether you're a boy or a girl, you're rich or poor, young or old, like anyone can have their mind blown by magic. It's something that's very inclusive. So by designing with equity and inclusion from the beginning, like I can reach way more people. And companies always talk about it like, oh, it's like the right thing to do for business. And, diverse teams innovate better. Yeah, that's all true. But you should just do it because it's the right thing to do, to include more people. We have tons of problems that we need to solve in this world. There's no reason why we shouldn't have every kid have the opportunity to at least explore it, right? Like you're saying, your parents might not have been able to tell you exactly what to do, but hopefully like someone could reach out and, say, here's one option. And that's what I want to do with STEM.
You're doing great. You're doing great. Yeah, I see how many people go to you when we go to conferences. That was pretty cool. I'm like, damn, Jay, you're the guy over here. But yeah, man, I don't know how long we've been talking here, but do you have any other thoughts? Anything you want to share with everybody out there? Any last ideas?
Yeah, it's like as basic as it sounds, just like I think what really helped me get to where I am and do all the cool things I've been able to do, from Ninja Warrior to TED Talks to creating my own business and brands to working with Bad Bunny and filming a commercial for Cheetos, blows my mind. Like the most iconic person on the planet right now, I'm doing an experiment for him. Fingers crossed that I actually get to meet him this time, and I don't know if they'll have him edit stuff separate or whatever. But all I did to be able to do this stuff was, one, identify what my strengths were. So what I did was a strengths finder test. It's a book, and you take a little assessment, and it gives you an idea of what you're good at. My top strength was communication. It encouraged me to speak at conferences. And so that's when I took on leadership roles, and I took on that presentation chair role, which when I was nervous and bad at speaking early on was good because I was in high school and in college, and it was still fine. Now I'm comfortable because of all those steps I took because of that test. I can talk to any group of people. And middle school and elementary school kids can be a tough crowd.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm set because of that, identifying that and working on it early. So your skills, and then your passion, and figuring out what really lights your spark and gets you excited every day. And figuring out how you can find that connection, that kind of cross point between your skills and what you're passionate about. And then once you figure that out, just pour your entire heart into it, whether that's as a volunteer at first or just doing side projects and hustling, whatever it is, but just start pouring your heart into it. And eventually people are going to start to recognize it, or you'll have a breakthrough, or you'll come up with a new idea that really gets you kind of out there. And for me, it's not magic, it's science, which has allowed me to do, everything I want to do now. I get to do what I love. I get to make an impact every single day. I get paid for it, for things that I used to do as a volunteer, right? And bigger opportunities are coming out of it. And who knows how far it'll go, or if I come up with another idea. But either way, like, because I figured out what I was good at and I poured my whole heart into what I was passionate about, I'm able to kind of build the life that I want. And
That's
anyone
amazing,
can
man.
do that. Anybody can do that.
That's amazing. I didn't think social media would be to this level, especially when it all started, when Instagram started. Now podcasts are more of a thing. People are talking more. And
did you have a MySpace page?
I did.
I wish I could log into it. I have no clue what the password is, or what my email was back then even. I'd love to be able to go back and look at my top 8. And
I probably should delete my profile.
Oh man, that would be awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, thanks for coming. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time. I hope that when you come back, we share more crazy ideas. Maybe we have more people here sitting down next to us from that group. I hope that we can all really come together and, this is a home for you guys, like the whole place for you guys. And yeah, hopefully we can make something happen together, man. Sure.
I'll be back for Sweet Convention in October. Maybe we can get a group for that, or anyone that's going to Sweet Convention, hit me up. Society of Women Engineers. That's going to be our biggest show this year. 600 girls that my wife and I are going to do the show for.
Wow. So
that might be an opportunity. Maybe we'll be then. But either way, I appreciate you having me here, and for your friendship, man. It's been an awesome ride.
Let's show them your box to the
camera. Do it. All right, so this is a kit the kids receive after every show we do. We're going to be having it available online soon, and we also just did some package redesign, so it's going to look a little different, but similar concept.
It's a little hard to open, as you can see.
Now, make sure that So one of the reasons why we do that actually is so that the little wire and stuff don't fall out. But one of the first things you'll see is these kind of fun, colorful, kind of, I guess, attractive, like to kids, experiment cards. So instead of a worksheet, like I was talking about with the labs earlier, you're getting something that just looks fun to start with, right? And so it's got what you need. It's got how to perform the magic. This one, for example, is the invisible firefighter. All you need is a candle, vinegar, and baking soda. So as I was mentioning, things that you probably already have at the home or you could get at the dollar store very easily. It's got the QR code at the bottom, which goes to the website if you want to watch videos of me doing it first. And then on the back, we have what we call the magic reveal. So that's the science behind the magic. So all of these tricks are actually science that make it work. It's not like smoke and mirrors. It's chemistry, it's material science, it's math sometimes. This one in particular talks about the combustion triangle. So the things you need in order for a fire to burn. And then the last thing, and I think one of the most important, is bringing the magic to life. So kids can write down ideas that they have based on what they learned, a product they want to design, or other ways that you could use what they learned in real life. Because I think that's a really important part for them to keep exploring. Not just watch me on TikTok. I want them to watch it, then I want them to do it, and then I want them to take that on and keep moving forward. So there's one of those for each of the experiments. Like we mentioned, we've got the It's Not Magic, It's Science color changing cup. The one we have in the kit now is changes to purple because you can do something pretty cool with it, in which, like, if you pour orange juice into it, cold orange juice, it looks like it turns into grape juice. So that's kind of a bonus. I had it with my little cousin, and I served her orange juice, and I was like, whoa, it looks like grape juice. And she loved that. And so I was like, we're going to go with purple from now on. It's got the baking soda you need, vinegar, the candle for a couple experiments. We've got an experiment here you do with a balloon, Alka-Seltzer tablet, this little film canister. So this one's a fun one. I do the big version. The grand finale experiment is the exploding paint can. Basically, you mix, again, baking soda and vinegar into this paint can. You have them in 2 separate cups inside the paint can, so they're not mixing. And then when you flip it, they mix, and it creates carbon dioxide gas. And so all this thing that's been sitting on the table and hasn't been explosive or anything is, I flip it over, and all of a sudden, a couple seconds later, it shoots up in the air, and all the kids go crazy. So they can do a mini version of that with the film canister, water, and Alka-Seltzer tablet. So, and it actually shoots up pretty high. It's pretty cool. This one has a good seal. And then the nitinol wire. So almost every single experiment card that we have in here, you have the things you need. There's certain things that I can't give you, like one of them requires an egg. I can't ship you an egg, right? Right. So, but you use the vinegar with the egg and stuff like that. So it allows the kids to explore. It gives them what they need to get started, the items that are harder for them to get, like this or the cup. And then the other stuff they can replenish, if they want to keep doing it.
And where can they get it?
So it's available on stemfinity.com. So that's a organization that sells all kinds of different STEM products. That's where we're going to have it available for individual purchase. And then when we give them away is at our shows. So the presenting sponsors that support our program in different schools across the country at science museums, they provide the kits for the kids as part of their sponsorship as well. So that's how we've been able to reach thousands of kids is really through those big partnerships. So if anyone wants to partner as well, feel free to reach out.
Hit up Jay.
Yes. It's
at
just
Jay Flores. Your Instagram handle? At
Jay Flores Inspires. So JayFlores Inspires. Same for TikTok. And I've got all kinds of pictures and videos of like kids' reactions and stuff, which is just the most priceless part. So to be able to see the excitement for STEM there is awesome. We got time for one funny story?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
So I was doing a show in Dallas. I don't share this a lot because, it's not bad, but it's kind of funny. I was doing a show in Dallas. It was like a really good crowd. It was like 4th graders. They were really into it. Everybody wanted to be a volunteer and be part of the show. Just a lot of good energy, a lot of excitement. And then we do the grand finale experiment, right? I made it go like super high, so the kids like freak out. They're all like cheering and clapping, and afterwards, like I had recorded that reaction, or I had recorded that last experiment. So I wanted to go into the crowd and find all the cool reactions. So I find this girl, she's just like clapping like crazy, throwing her hands up in the air. There's one kid in the back that's like running back and forth. Like his just excitement was just like too much. And he starts running laps. All kinds of like fun. One kid was dancing. He was doing like a little like arm dance thing. And as I'm zooming around, I'm looking in the second row, there's a fight that broke out. And nobody has a clue. In the video, I'm like clapping with the kids. The principal's in the background just like clapping. The teachers have no idea. I guess in the excitement, like one kid accidentally hit the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they just started kind of kicking each other. And there was a Superman punch that was thrown. They're all sitting on the ground. So like it wasn't super obvious, but it's just funny to see all this excitement. The kids were so pumped that nobody in the whole building, not the principal, not the teachers, not any of the other kids, realized that two of the kids were punching each other.
That's hilarious.
So I don't condone any of the fighting or anything like that, but just to show that the level of excitement that we had during that show, that could be hidden within the crowd.
That's hilarious. I can see you looking back at the video, and you're like, did you see that? The kids are fighting, literally.
I was like, that's what happened. Literally, I was scrolling through. I was like, oh, that girl's like really good. I'm going to zoom into her and clip that for Instagram or whatever. And then I'm like, was that a Superman punch? Like, what just happened? And then I had to like look and see what happened. And it is, again, fortunately, the kids were fine. They ended up breaking it up themselves. They kind of like calmed themselves down. But that was a funny moment.
Kids being kids.
Exactly. Science making you so pumped that you don't even notice the UFC going on in row two.
Exactly. But yeah, man, appreciate it. Thanks for coming. If there's anything else you got, I think we can call it episode 3 of Cerebral Zone is over.
Let's go. My sister's favorite number is 3, so that's a good note to end on.
Let's go.
Appreciate you again. And yeah, let's keep coming up with these big ideas.
Let's do it. Thank you all for watching.